Well, hello everyone. I would like to welcome you to this really special training. 3 steps you must take to get your thesis done. If you can hear me, please say hello in the chat box and let me know where you're calling from. I always love to see what an international audience we have. I know that for some of you, it is really early in the morning or really late at night. Or perhaps you're listening to this while you're at work, and I really want to honor you for taking the time to be here with me today and to learn some of the strategies that will really help you to get your thesis done. So I can see Rose. I can see Bob. Hi, Bob. Mia from Philadelphia. Daria. I can see Dimitri from Austria. Hey, Dimitri. I can see Erica and Rama from France. Diana, Anand, Daria from Milan. Okay, well, it looks like the technology is working well. If at any time you can't hear me or the screen becomes a little bit fuzzy, you can click the blue reconnect button at the bottom of the screen, and that's going to help you to refresh the connection and perhaps restore the sound. Okay then, so let's get started with 3 steps you must take to get your thesis done. So I am Dora Farkas. I am the founder of Finish Your Thesis. I am a thesis and a career coach, and I established the online Finish Your Thesis community back in 2009. So just in case you're wondering whether this is the right training for you, I want to assure you that you're in the right place if you are working on your master's or PhD thesis and you want to break out of the vicious burnout cycle, if you want to at least double your productivity when it comes to writing your thesis, if you want to be confident that you're making consistent progress on your thesis, and most importantly, if you want to get your thesis done as quickly as possible. If any of these resonate with you, then you're in the right place. So I wanted to begin by giving you a little bit of background about myself. I got my PhD in biological engineering from MIT. I then continued my career at Tufts Medical School as a postdoctoral fellow. And then I went to the pharmaceutical industry where I worked for several years as a senior scientist. I'm also a trained life coach and thesis and career coach, and I'm the founder of the global online Finish Your Thesis community. So you may be wondering how I went from being a scientist and engineer to a thesis and career coach and founding this online community. And it really goes back to my story in graduate school. So I had a pretty tough time in graduate school. After 5 years, I was in a situation where I really thought that I would never graduate because all of the odds were stacked against me. I had a very challenging thesis topic. So after 5 years, I had no publishable and no reproducible data. Due to the stress, I had chronic inflammation in my arms, and this really reduced the amount of time that I was able to work to sometimes just 1 hour a day, sometimes only 15 minutes. So my work time was really limited. And on top of that, I had 3 committee members who had very different requirements for my thesis. So we spent a lot of the meetings arguing about what was expected from me for my thesis. But there was one committee meeting when they finally all came to an agreement and they said, okay, if you get this done, then we will let you graduate this semester. Just go ahead and schedule your defense date. So I was really excited about that until I went back and I checked everybody's calendar. And it turned out that the 3 committee members were so busy that there was literally only 1 hour in that whole semester when they were all available to attend my defense. And that date happened to be only 20 days after this particular committee meeting. So that meant that I had to write my thesis almost from scratch in less than 3 weeks. So clearly, I needed a different strategy if I wanted to graduate on time. And more specifically, I had to figure out how to get a lot of writing done in less than 3 weeks. So I had to develop new strategies because I was given this ultimatum that if you get it done by this date, we'll let you graduate. That's a pretty strong motivator. So I developed these strategies that helped me to get my thesis done in 20 days. And I also applied these strategies to then finish 3 first author publications in the next 6 months. And then when I continued my career as a postdoctoral fellow, I wrote 5 publications in peer-reviewed journals. And while working in the pharmaceutical industry, I authored and co-authored over 50 scientific reports. And what I learned from all this experience where I did all of this technical and scientific writing is that the key to writing your thesis is not to work more hours, but to have clear direction and structure. And so since 2009, I have trained thousands of graduate students through private coaching, online programs, and live events. Here you can see just some of the universities where I've given live workshops. And today I will share with you those strategies that I have been sharing with students in these past years. So let me just quickly check the chat box here to make sure that everybody can hear me well. And it looks like everybody can hear me just great. So I'm going to continue on and tell you first how you get stuck in the vicious cycle of procrastination and burnout, and what is really holding you back from writing even when you do have time to write. Then I will share with you the 3 steps that you must take to finish your thesis, and I will have a few Q&A breaks here. So if you have any questions about any of the material that I cover, then please put your questions in the chat box because I will take a couple of breaks to answer any questions that come up. And finally, at the end of the training, I will share with you a really special opportunity to work directly with me, but only after I have delivered you tremendous value in this training and only if it is okay with you. So if you would like to hear about this opportunity, please type yes into the chat box. And I will take a quick water break here before we get started. All right, so I can already see many yeses appearing on the chat box here. So I'm just really impressed how committed you are to finishing your thesis. So let's get started right away with how you get stuck in the vicious cycle of procrastination and burnout, which is all too familiar for many students in grad school. So there are about 100,000 new doctoral students every year in the US alone. So globally, there are hundreds or maybe even 1 million new PhD students every year. But 50% of these students never finish their PhD thesis. And even worse, many students quit after spending many years and a lot of money on graduate school. So as you can imagine, this is a big problem for the students and also the graduate schools who have been funding these students. So the Council of Graduate Schools did a very extensive 7-year study called the PhD Completion Project to evaluate what are the circumstances or the factors that influence whether a student will finish their thesis or drop out of graduate school. And what they have found was that the students who drop out have the academic ability to finish their thesis. In other words, if you're in grad school, you have what it takes to finish your thesis. You have the academic ability. But the main reasons for the high attrition rate are first, time management, especially conflicts with your family or your job. There may be loss of motivation or focus as the years go on. And you may have conflicts with your thesis supervisors. This feeling of isolation, of not having accountability, is also a pretty common reason for dropping out. And finally, difficulty with writing and finishing the thesis is the leading cause for the high attrition rate. So most students drop out not because they're not smart enough to finish their thesis, but because they do not have a strategy to write a graduate level thesis. And without the right strategy, you can be stuck in the cycle of burnout and procrastination for years. And I will describe the cycle, and this may resonate with you. And it starts with setting an ambitious goal. And I can personally relate to this because I know that graduate students by nature are very ambitious. And then you work long hours until you're exhausted or you're burned out, and eventually you don't have energy, so you start procrastinating. And then you may fall behind on your deadlines. And then when you recover, then once again, you're back to setting your goal, which in this case may be even more ambitious because now you've lost some time. And then you go through the cycle again and again. And each time you go through it, you're more exhausted, you're more frustrated, and you really start to wonder, what got you into this cycle and how you will ever get out of graduate school. So the interesting thing is that after you have been through this cycle for many months or even years, then even when you have a block of time to write, it doesn't mean that you'll be able to get quality writing done in that time. And you may have had this experience yourself when you have a few hours to write, but you're not able to focus. So what are some of the things that can hold you back from writing even when you do have the time? So first, where do you start writing? Which section of the thesis do you begin with? And how do you summarize all of your notes and data and incorporate it into a cohesive manuscript? And do you know enough to start writing, or should you read more papers? And are you going in the right direction with your thesis? So more hours do not equal more progress, because you can be working and working and working, but perhaps you're not working on the right things, or you're not able to really focus. So it's really not about the number of hours that help you to finish your thesis. And after years of stop and go writing, you might wonder if you will ever graduate, like many students in this situation who pick up some momentum, but then they lose the momentum and then they wonder how to pick it up again. You might start to wonder if you will ever graduate. And so this is why I will show you the 3 steps that you must take to finish your thesis. And every student whom I have worked with who finished their thesis took these 3 steps. These are 3 steps that you have to take. And for those of you who have just joined the webinar, I see some new people in the room here. Welcome. I will have a couple of brief Q&A breaks here. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and I will answer them. So let's talk about the 3 steps you must take to get your thesis done. So these steps may seem like common sense, but common sense isn't always common practice. So when I will share with you these steps, I will also explain how you can make these common practice for yourself. So step number 1, stop expecting the perfect thesis. This is probably the most important step of all, because when you expect your thesis to be perfect, you hold yourself to impossibly high standards. And you don't feel ready to write because you always feel like you don't know enough or you need to read more. And you may beat yourself up for mistakes, or if you get negative feedback from your supervisor or your committee, or if something takes too long. And you may spend too much time trying to correct every little detail until your work seems perfect. And perfectionism is one of the most common causes of burnout, which makes sense because the more perfect you want something to be, the harder you're going to work on it, and the more likely it is that you're going to get burned out. So if we go back to the cycle that I shared with you earlier, you can see how perfectionism leads to unreasonably long work hours, guilt, and low self-confidence, particularly at this step here, because if you're a perfectionist, you're going to keep working until everything is perfect, but instead of being able to finish things on time, you're going to burn out, and actually it's going to be counterproductive. So here are some hidden costs of being a perfectionist that you may not have realized before. First, perfectionism and chronic stress can lead to health conditions such as anxiety or different types of physical pain. Perhaps things take longer to complete than necessary because you're trying to perfect all the details. You may have conflicts with your supervisor, with your committee, with your coworkers, and because you're working so much, you may miss out on quality time with your family, your friends, and colleagues. And in addition to working so much, you're also wondering if you will ever finish your thesis. So this causes even more stress. So if you want to stop being a perfectionist, should you lower your standards? And the answer is absolutely not. And I'm going to explain that to you. So what I tell my students is to aim for excellence, not perfection. And excellence and perfection sound really similar, but as I will show you, they're almost opposites of each other. So what do I mean by aiming for excellence and not perfection? How do you know whether you are a perfectionist versus you're aiming for excellence? Well, here is the key difference. Perfectionism is caused by a fear of being judged either by yourself or by the people looking at your work. So when you're a perfectionist, the thoughts that are going through your head while you're working on your manuscript are, is this good enough? Or is this as good as? And then you may be comparing your thesis or manuscript to somebody else's. Or you might think, what will my supervisor say when he or she reads this? And will they think that it's not up to their standards? Oh, maybe I will work on this a little bit more so I'm not embarrassed when I present it. So as you can see, these perfectionist tendencies are caused primarily by fear, and most likely the fear of being judged by yourself or somebody else. Excellence, on the other hand, comes from a desire to contribute. It comes from a desire to try to make everything excellent. So, for example, when you're working on your writing and your desire is to contribute to your field, the questions that are going through your mind are like, well, how can I improve this so it is a unique contribution to my field? How can I simplify this so it's clear for my supervisor and my committee? Because the more clear it is for them, the easier it will be for them to sign off on my thesis. And if you run into a problem, the questions you will ask are, well, how can I solve this creatively? What can I learn from this? Or whom can I ask for help to make it even better? So as you can see, whether if you're a perfectionist versus you're aiming for excellence, your experience of working on your thesis or any other manuscript are completely different, because perfectionism comes from a place of fear and excellence comes from a desire to contribute. So step number 1 is to stop expecting the perfect thesis and to aim for an excellent thesis. And in this process of stopping to expect the perfect thesis, you also let go of other expectations, such as what people think of you, what people think about your journey through graduate school, how long it took, or what career you have. And it's actually quite liberating to let go of all of these expectations and instead put your focus on creating a thesis that is really excellent. So I'm going to take a quick water break here and look at the chat box here to answer any questions. I have a question from Asyad. I hope I pronounced that correctly. How to avoid writing block? I'm going to get to that. You predicted my questions, so that will be answered. Daria said, how to understand when it's enough to read and I should start to write? So I'm also going to answer that in the next section. Mia says, interesting distinction. Yes, it is. It definitely can be. Daria says, I should have a baby this autumn. Congratulations. Do you think it's realistic to plan some hours of working for my PhD thesis having a newborn? So, I had babies when I was a postdoctoral fellow and I was writing my grant, which isn't the same as a PhD thesis, but it was still very intense. And yes, it is possible to do academic writing while taking care of young children. So thank you for asking that. NM says, is there a replay? Yes, you will get the link to the replay about an hour or two after this is over. Okay, so I am going to continue to step number 2, and then you'll have another opportunity for an open Q&A section. And so let's get to step number 2. So when you're aiming to create an excellent thesis, it is really important to start a daily writing routine. And again, that's something that's common sense, but it is so much easier said than done because you're probably really busy with so many things. So how can you possibly establish a daily writing routine? So here are some things that you may not know about daily writing. And if you have a family to take care of, young children, for example, or you're juggling your thesis writing with your job, then these things, may help you a lot to think about how to implement writing as a daily routine. So first, writing every day doesn't mean that you have to write a lot every day because progress is not linear. There are some small hops, some days where you will write one paragraph, which are followed by big leaps, days where you write multiple pages, and then on the following day, you may only write a couple of paragraphs. So progress is not linear. The other thing is that you don't have to write well every day. You just need to write every day. It doesn't have to be high quality every day because drafts are messy, and that's okay because you'll get a chance to revise your drafts later. So here are some other things that you may not know about daily writing. First, you don't need a lot of time to get the benefits of daily writing. Can you find 15 minutes in your day to write? This is the question that I struggled with when I had young children and also when I was struggling with my medical condition in graduate school. I really had very limited amount of time to work. Yet I found that if you're really, really focused and you plan and you know what you're going to write during the limited time that you have, you can actually get a lot done. So you don't need a lot of time every day to get the benefits of daily writing. And having one big block of time over the weekend doesn't necessarily make up for skipping daily writing. Because writing a little bit daily during the week helps you to get more writing done on the weekends. It's not to say that you shouldn't try to make more time for writing on the weekends or when you have time off from work, but that all the preparation, all the little bits of time that you write during the week will help you to get more writing done when you have your big time block. So going back to the question, I think it was from Asyad or Asjad. I hope I pronounced it correctly. How can you write daily if you have writer's block? So here's a quote from an author named John Rogers. And the quote is, you can't think yourself out of a writer's block. You have to write yourself out of a thinking block. So yeah, I really love this quote because it really makes the point that the only way to get over writer's block is to write. And you don't have to write well. You just have to write something until you clarify your ideas. The hardest part about writing is starting, because once you start writing, once you pick up a little bit of momentum, even if your writing isn't as good as you want it to be, even if it's not the section you wanted to work on, as long as you pick up your momentum, it is much easier to maintain that momentum. But here are some of the things that may make it hard to start writing. So first, you may think, well, which section should I begin with? Or how do I make sense out of what I'm writing? And is it even worth starting to write if I only have 30 minutes? And I'm not sure whether I'm ready to start writing because I need to read more. And I just don't feel like writing today. And what I learned is that most writers don't feel like writing at least 95% of the time. So even professional writers don't feel like writing. Many of them feel like they need to read more. So going back to that question earlier, like what to do if you feel like you need to read more. And the answer is to begin your day with writing, even if you feel like you don't know enough, and then do the reading later on in the day. Take the notes, and then the next day when you start writing, that's when you can incorporate some of the notes into your writing. When you write every day, you get comfortable with writing, even when you don't feel like writing. It just becomes a habit. And you get comfortable with messy or very messy drafts, and you're able to maintain your momentum and your train of thought because you're doing it daily. So it's much easier to keep that train of thought that you would otherwise lose if you only wrote during the times when you have several hours in a row. And when you write daily, you know where to continue writing. And the more you write, the more confident you will feel about finishing your thesis, which is a really great thing because confidence in yourself, trusting yourself, that you're able to follow through and meet your deadlines is really important in graduate school so that you can finish your thesis. So step number 2 is to start a daily writing routine, even if you don't feel like writing, even if you feel like you don't know enough to begin writing, but to really write every day. So again, I'm going to take a quick water break and look at the chat box and answer any questions that come up here. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Okay, so question from Veronique. How to get down to work when it's time to work? How to avoid that no man's land? I'm not really sure what you mean by that, Veronique. Maybe you could retype that question and I will come back to it. Okay, we have a question from Gitanyali. How to overcome the problem of having difficulty with writing? So again, the more you write, the more you're going to clarify your ideas and the clearer your drafts will become. At the beginning, they're messy. They're messy for everyone. And once I was a postdoc already, I just knew that. And that's how I was able to publish papers, that I just knew that the beginning of writing was going to be messy. Asyat says, how to maintain consistency? Well, one way to do it is to really decide in advance what are the times that you're going to write and then to stick to it. And if it doesn't work, then to try something different. Erasmus says, how do I cut down the volume of materials to help me to focus? So I'm assuming that you're talking about the materials that you need to incorporate into your thesis. What I would do is to focus on one small section at a time and just get the materials for that one small section. And that should cut down on all of the things that may distract you. Okay, so CJ, could you explain what you mean by writer's block? So writer's block is a term that people use when they feel like they're not able to write, that, they just sit down and they have no ideas. So some people claim that there is no such thing as a writer's block, that you just have to sit down and begin writing. So it's an interesting argument, but that's the answer to the question. Quasi says, I pass more time on reading, but no start writing. Yes, that's what reading is so much easier. So that's what people struggle with. Rana says, do you refer to the last stages of PhD to write? Actually, any stage. This is true for any stage. I wrote my thesis proposal when I was in my second year. And really, these were the strategies that were most useful for me. So it applies to every stage. Okay, so Lashmi says, I was not able to hear it. You will get the replay after the presentation through email. You'll get the link. Vidisha says, how to manage between analysis and writing. So writing is one of those things where you really have to protect your time to write. So if you decide on a routine that this is the time that I'm going to write, then you stick to it, and then you find another time to do the analysis, but you don't go back and forth between the two. That's really the key, is to keep them separate. Rama says, I have so many notes, I lost my concentration. How may I organize my brain? So again, that goes back to narrowing down what sections you're going to work on. And then you'll have fewer notes to work with. Any suggestions on carrying out post-viva corrections? That goes back to writing every day and addressing each revision one at a time. Thank you for it. Thank you for asking that, and I'm glad you've had a Viva already, or Viva, I should say. Roshan says, how do you prioritize over family matters and constant urgent matters that pop up? So, as I mentioned before, you have to protect your writing time. It's not always going to work. I have a family, so I know that. But if you do prioritize your writing time, if you make some arrangements, then it should work a higher percentage of the time than if you didn't plan. So I hope that works for you. Okay, so I will take one more question here from Lashmi. Could you please repeat step 1 again? Step 1, thank you for asking. So if you missed the beginning of this training, step 1 is to stop expecting a perfect thesis and to aim for an excellent thesis, thinking about how to make your thesis better instead of perfect. So, okay, so I'm going to go to step number 3, and I will have an open Q&A at the end. So if you have any other questions, please put them in the chat box and I will get to them. So step number 2 was to start a daily writing routine. But even if you write every day, you may have self-doubt about whether you're going in the right direction. So step number 3, which is also critical, is to keep measuring your progress until you finish your thesis. I remember being a first and then the second year graduate student, and I thought that those final year students were so lucky because they were so close to finishing their thesis. But the reality is that the stress doesn't diminish as you get closer to finishing that thesis, because there's always that self-doubt. Even just days before the deadline, when you have 98% of your thesis done, there's still that little bit of self-doubt that you're not going to meet your deadline. So that's why it is so critical that you have a way to measure your progress and track it until you finish your thesis. So a question that you should be asking yourself is, are you getting a step closer to finishing every day? Are you taking an action every day that is bringing you closer to finishing your thesis? So I wanted to share this comic with you. This is from PhD Comics. If you're not familiar with it, this is one of the main characters. His name is Mike Slackerney. And so in this comic, he's sitting down to work on his thesis, wondering where to begin. And then he says, maybe I'll start with the acknowledgments. So this really drives home the point that just because you're writing, it doesn't mean that you're going in the right direction or that you're working on the right sections. So even if you have a daily writing routine, you may feel stuck if you feel like your progress is too slow, or if you don't know what you need to be working on right now, or you don't know what you need to do to finish your thesis, or if you feel like your thesis isn't good enough, or if you don't have the confidence in yourself that you can finish your thesis. So there's a great quote from an author named Peter Drucker, and he says, "You can't manage what you don't measure." So what this means is that if you want to manage progress on your if you want to manage your thesis, if you want to make sure that you graduate on time, you have to find a way to measure your progress. So when you measure progress on your thesis, you realize how much you have already completed. And this motivates you to make even more progress on your thesis. You recognize what are the challenges that you need to work through, and you realize what are the sections that you need to focus on right now. And then you gain the confidence that you are moving closer to the finish line. So how can you measure progress on your thesis? Well, there are a couple of different ways. My favorite way is to think about what are the sections that you have already completed or that are close to completion. Always begin by, what's already working? What have I already finished? So think about the sections or perhaps a table of contents or your proposal, something that you have already completed that is bringing you closer to the finish line. Another way to measure progress is how many words did you write? Some schools have requirements for the number of words that they require in a thesis, but even if they don't, you can set a daily word goal for yourself that's going to help you to measure progress. Because remember, the goal is to write every day. Even if you don't write well every day, if you produce words every day, that will bring you closer to the finish line. Another thing to think about is what are the results that you achieved today or this week? And by results, I'm thinking broadly, like, for example, you took notes on journal articles or you did some analysis. That was one of the earlier questions. Those are all things that bring you closer to the finish line. And what are some of the challenges that you worked through? Perhaps you didn't produce more words or you didn't create more data analysis, but you worked through some of the challenges that were holding you back before. Perhaps you had a discussion with your thesis supervisor. And finally, when you measure your progress, that helps you to evaluate, is your current writing routine helping you to stay on track? So we had a question earlier about what you do if you have a family and you have urgent matters coming up. Well, if you have a family, then some hours of the day are probably better than other hours of the day because you need to be realistic about when you can work on your thesis. So if your current writing routine isn't working, then by measuring your progress, you can think about what other times of day or perhaps what other places you can work on to stay on track with your thesis. So the more progress you notice, the more motivated you will be to continue to make progress. And if you think about it, this makes a lot of sense because if you see that the routine that you have is working, perhaps you're not writing quite as fast as you'd like to, but you do see that you're making progress, that will bring up your confidence and that will motivate you to continue to make more progress. So step number 3 is to measure your progress because that will give you the confidence to finish your thesis. So remember at the beginning of this training, I mentioned that I will share with you an opportunity to work with me directly. Well, I'd like you to think about what is finishing your thesis all about? What does it mean for you specifically to finish your thesis? And how will your life be different when your thesis is done? And I can tell you from personal experience and from working with thousands of graduate students that once you finish your thesis, it has a positive impact on every area of your life. Your finances will improve, your relationships will improve because you no longer have the burden of your thesis. Your career will improve because now you can actually have some options of where you're going to work. And most importantly, your health will improve because you won't have the stress of having to write your thesis anymore. So what what I want to do is to show you how to implement what you learned today so you can finish your thesis faster. Because after working with students for so many years, what I decided to do is to take all of those strategies and to create a special program to help you to finish your thesis faster with the support of an interactive community. And so I'd like to introduce you to a brand new program that I just developed called the Writing Accelerator Bootcamp. And the purpose of this program is to help you to go from feeling overwhelmed or struggling with writer's block to feeling confident and consistently writing so you can be finally done writing your thesis. Because if you're on this training, I know that you want to be done writing your thesis. So what makes the Writing Accelerator Bootcamp unique? So many thesis writing boot camps are 1 weekend or 1 week long, but unless you're really close to finishing your thesis, you can't write your thesis in just 1 weekend. So the Writing Accelerator Bootcamp is multiple weeks long, and I will show you how that works. And it trains you to write your thesis in the context of your everyday life. So I could see that many students in the audience here have young children. And so clearly you don't have multiple hours every day undisturbed to work on your thesis. And so what this bootcamp is about is to train you how to write on your thesis while balancing your responsibilities with your family or your job. And you will get access to a confidential, safe online community around the clock because we have students from all the different time zones. So you'll always be able to access our online community, which allows you to get support and write your thesis on your timeline and get daily support from me and graduate students just like you in this bootcamp. So before I share with you the details of the bootcamp itself, I want to show you some of the results that people have achieved so that you know what are the benefits of these specific strategies that I share with students. So Jessamine Price was one of my private clients, and she says that Dora's program will help you get on the right track with your thesis. Dora knows how to keep people accountable, but accountable for realistic goals, not the impossible demands we place on ourselves as researchers. And Jessamine ended up being very successful. She's currently a writing coach, and she was the winner of the Best Thesis Award the year that she finished her thesis. I also want to share with you what another best-selling author, Michael Smith, said. So he wrote that, "I wish I had access to this type of material. When I completed my dissertation, as it included everything I could have possibly needed, and critically, the material is road-tested and proven to work." So I'd like to share with you two more success stories. One is from Kwong Evans Long, who's currently an assistant professor in the United Kingdom. And he said that one of my fears before joining Dora's program was that I would not be able to graduate on time. I felt stressed, and this led to a lack of motivation. After I started the program, I became more productive, and I learned to focus on the tasks that were helping me to finish my thesis. And he got not just one, but 2 offers for professorships once he finished his thesis. So he has a very successful career. And finally, I'd like to share with you a success story from a PhD student named Adrian. And she said, "As a PhD candidate in my final year, I have attended numerous workshops on procrastination, productivity, writer's block, and nothing seemed to stick. Dora's strategies are simple and they truly work. I have written more since participating in her program than I had in the past 6 months before it." And that's what I really love to hear, that these strategies are easy to implement for students and they work right away. So here are the dates of the Writing Accelerator Bootcamp. The enrollment for the program is this week, but there's some limited time bonuses that I will share with you. And then the boot camp itself is going to run from May 15th to June 4th. Originally, I was only going to run it for 1 week, but I know that many students are traveling. And so the way it's going to work is that you have the opportunity to be in the boot camp for all 3 weeks, or you can participate in 1 or 2 weeks, depending on your schedule. And the way I structured it is that you will get the benefit of the boot camp as long as you can commit to 1 full week. So you can work with us for up to 3 weeks, but as long as you can commit to 1 full week, you will get the benefits. And so what happens after the boot camp? I decided to add 3 bonus boot camp weeks, spaced 2 weeks apart after the official boot camp is over. And again, you have the opportunity to participate in all 3 bonus boot camp weeks or just 1 or 2. So overall, you can get support for 6 weeks, daily support for 6 weeks to work on your thesis, or the weeks that are most convenient depending on your schedule. So what are the boot camp weeks all about? How do they work? So they're primarily, the accountability for the boot camp is primarily over Facebook, although I will have some live trainings, as I will show you. But the way it works is that the weekend before each boot camp, you will share your goals with the group over Facebook. So this is where you make your commitment for the week for accountability. And then during boot camp week, you get daily support from me. You get tips, you get inspiration. You can share your progress and commit to your actions the next day. And one of the most frequent questions that I get is, well, how many hours a day do I need to commit to participate in this boot camp? And as I mentioned earlier, the purpose of the boot camp is to give you the training to work on your thesis in the context of your everyday life. So as long as you can commit at least 15 minutes a day to your thesis, then you will get the benefits of this boot camp. This will also give you the opportunity to ask questions, work through challenges, and get support from me and the rest of the community. And then at the end of each boot camp week, you will set goals for the following week. This gives you the accountability to establish that daily writing habit, and also the continuity to make consistent progress. So you no longer have to struggle with stop and go writing. So I also created some online training to help you to get the most out of bootcamp. And this is available already as soon as you enroll in the program. So you can get your mind, get your materials and your space set up, your schedule set up, if you need to shift around some things. So module 1 is how to set yourself up to write a lot. Because as I mentioned earlier, if you have a big time block to write, preparation is key. If you want to succeed, you really have to set yourself up to succeed. So the first thing we're going to focus on in module 1 is what to focus on depending on what stage of writing you're at. Then I will cover the foundation of consistent daily writing. I also created a personalized writing plan, and this is what's going to help you to stay on track with your writing and create your plans to make sure that you get a step closer to finishing your thesis every day. And finally, I have some tips that have worked really well for the students who have worked with me before to ensure your daily writing success. Now, I added a bonus to module 1, how to review the literature without drowning in overwhelm, because I know the literature review can be the most challenging part of a thesis. So that's why I added this bonus so that if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you feel like you have a lot of notes, this bonus will really help you to get the literature review together without feeling overwhelmed. So module 2 is all about the bootcamp, how to prepare for bootcamp week, how to write when you feel like you can't, and how to stay focused despite interruptions. And I know this is a big one if you have to write your thesis at lunch, while at work, or if you have a family. And I also added a bonus here, how to use Evernote and OneNote to accelerate your writing, because there are some online tools that can really help you to become more organized and write your thesis more efficiently. So I created a training on how to use these tools. And finally, Module 3 is about post-bootcamp success. So this bootcamp is not just about getting some writing done during those weeks, but then continuing to write after the bootcamp is over. So in Module 3, I cover how to stay accountable to yourself and others, what to do if you want to quit, how to deal with revisions from your supervisor, and then I have a bonus here, tips for your proposal or thesis defense. So if you have a thesis proposal defense or the thesis defense itself coming up soon, you're going to get some tips here on how to get your mindset ready, given that your professor is going to ask you any questions about your field, and also what are the most typical questions that professors usually ask during the defense. So I have a limited time bonus, which is a small group coaching session. So I will have 6 live Q&A training calls with me. We're going to have one every week before a bootcamp week. It's going to be very similar to this type of training where we have open Q&A and you get live feedback from me. You can submit questions in advance and I will answer your questions anonymously during the training. And in case you cannot make it to the training itself, all group calls will be recorded and you can listen to them anytime and get the answers to your questions in case you weren't able to attend. So I want to summarize everything that you get when you join the Writing Accelerator Bootcamp. And in parentheses, I have the value of everything if I offered it separately. So you get the 3-week intensive bootcamp, which includes daily support on our private confidential Facebook community. And it also includes email support directly from me. You get the training videos to prepare you for bootcamp, the 3 bonus modules on how to do your literature review, how to use Evernote and OneNote, and how to prepare for your proposal or thesis defense. You get the 3 bonus bootcamp weeks in June and July, and then you get an opportunity to participate in the small Q&A group coaching sessions. So the value of everything here is over $2,000, which I know exceeds the budget of most graduate students. So when I first thought about rolling out this program, I wanted to offer it for just the price of the 3-week intensive bootcamp. And students were really excited about that opportunity. But I'd like to offer a special this semester as this is the grand opening of the program. And so the price for the Writing Accelerator Bootcamp is only $297. Now, if you remember at the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned that I would have a really special opportunity for you. So I have a surprise bonus, which is that if you decide to join the Writing Accelerator Bootcamp, while you're still on this webinar, you get a one-on-one private strategy session with me. And during this session, we will develop a personalized plan for you to finish your thesis. And so if that's the only thing that you got from investing in this program, that would already be worth more than your investment. But in addition to that, you get all the program and all of the bonuses as well. So now obviously I have a limited number of spots for the one-on-one strategy sessions. But if you decide to join the program while you're still on this webinar, I will make sure that you get a spot for the one-on-one strategy session, and you will get an email from me after this webinar on how to schedule your one-on-one strategy session. So if you look on the right of your screen, you will see an orange button here which says click here to learn more. This is going to take you directly to the program information page about the Writing Accelerator Bootcamp, where you will get all the information about the program itself, the bonuses, and how to join. And again, if you decide to join the program while you're still on this webinar, I will make sure that you get a one-on-one strategy session with me. So I know that you showed up today to accelerate your writing so you can finish your thesis. And you have a choice. You can continue working on your own, or you can work with me and the community and get the accountability and the structure to really accelerate your thesis writing. And these strategies work in any field. So you may still be wondering whether this is the right program for you. And I want to assure you that your success is my highest priority. So I have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if the course is not for you, you get a full refund, no questions asked. So you really have nothing to lose except frustration, burnouts, writer's block, sleepless nights, and the opportunity to accelerate your thesis writing and finish your thesis so you can graduate. So the best thesis is a finished thesis. And if you're in a PhD or a master's program and you want to finish your thesis soon, I really encourage you to enroll in this program because these strategies are proven to work. I've been teaching them to my students since 2009, and the online community is absolutely wonderful. It's a vibrant, very positive, confidential online community where you can get support at any time. So if you're working on your master's or PhD thesis, I really encourage you to join and get the strategies and the support that you need to finish your thesis. And if that button didn't work for you on the screen, then you can go to finishyourthesis.com/bootcamp, and that's going to take you to the information page. So I'm going to go now to the chat box and take any questions that I get. So I see Adrian's question at the top. And Adrian, thank you so much for joining the Writing Bootcamp. Yes, you will absolutely get your one-on-one strategy session. I can't wait to talk with you. So you will get an email from me to schedule that session. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Let's go back to the questions that I had before. Okay, so I'm going to go to a question by Mang. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I have time to write, but I just feel repulsive and resistance to write. Any suggestion? So yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Many times when I worked on my thesis, I literally couldn't look at it anymore. And it was a good thing that somebody told me this when I was a first-year student, that when you just can't look at your thesis anymore, it probably means that you're close to finishing. So I hope that makes you feel a little bit better. You just have to bite the bullet and work on the section that's easiest for you, and maybe schedule just 5 minutes or just 15 minutes to write, but to really start writing any section that you can. Okay, so we have a question from Miko. I have agreed with my supervisor to start with the first chapter, but I feel like that chapter is the most difficult for me, whereas I have an idea for the third chapter and I think it would go easy. Would you recommend asking to start from the end so that I can build momentum better? Yes, I do recommend that you start with the chapter that's easiest for you. Many times it's the methodology. I don't know if that's the third chapter for you. Sometimes it's the results section, but the first chapter, which is the introduction and the literature review, can be the most challenging. So if you can talk with your supervisor and they're flexible and they can review the chapters for you in a different order, then I would definitely try to arrange that. Quasi said, if I need exclusive help for my thesis, what should I do? So if you join the program while you're still on this webinar, you will get a one-on-one strategy with me. So then you can get personalized help. Ezra said, what's the difference between a master's degree and a PhD? Should both be creating new methods and ideas? To what extent? So it just depends on what your program calls it. It's master's or PhD thesis. I think it depends on the school and your field and the expectations from your department. Okay, we have a question from Veronique. I have to submit on September 12th. I'm currently writing my last chapter and conclusion. My challenge is to get motivated in the beginning of my writing session. How to start an efficient writing session without struggling with the lack of motivation and anxiety. So September 12th, so that means you have a couple of months. Basically, writing is, it's hard to think about, I want to make every writing session efficient because every writing session is going to be a little bit different. So if you want to make it efficient, it does help to know what you want to achieve by the end of the session. What is your goal? What's the number of words you want to write? What's the section that you'd like to work on? So you can make it more efficient if you clarify your goals. But really, at the end of the day, you have to invest the time and start writing and develop your ideas as you go along. Ezard says, I need to submit in 2 weeks, left with 3 chapters. Should I sleep 4 hours? And I have lack of motivation. Yes, so I can definitely relate to this. So if you have very little time and you need to submit your thesis, then you need to be very efficient, very focused on what's going to help you to move your thesis forward. And Ezard, I can definitely relate to that. I did sleep more than 4 hours a day, but I know that sometimes you just have to put in the time if you're that close. So Elham says, I don't have a Facebook account. So if you don't have a Facebook account, you can still get benefit from the bootcamp. You will get access to the training videos, and you will get access to the small group coaching session, which is a live session just like this one where you can ask questions from me. Okay. Okay, Andrea says, if I already did the FYT program, so that's my Finish Your Thesis program, and want to do the Writing Accelerator, will the bonuses and program be different? Yes, it's a different program because the Writing Accelerator Bootcamp is more intensive. So there's going to be a lot of writing in a short amount of time. So if you would like structure, if you would like accountability, then the Writing Accelerator Bootcamp will give you that structure. The program material and the bonuses are also different. I developed the training videos specifically for the Writing Accelerator Bootcamp. So it is a different program. Nicole asked the same question. The online community will be the same. So it's actually a different online community because some people who didn't participate in the Finish Your Thesis program are joining the Writing Accelerator Bootcamp. So it's a different Facebook community. And Andrea says, what's the difference between the two programs? Again, the difference is that the bootcamp is a bootcamp, just what it sounds like. It's intensive. There's daily writing for multiple weeks, and it's all about getting a lot of writing done in a short amount of time. Nicole says, do you plan on offering this writing bootcamp in the fall? I don't know yet. This is the grand opening of the program, so I haven't decided yet how frequently I will offer this program. Quasi says, do you think this bootcamp will cover whole of the thesis tried up? I'm not sure I understand your question, Quasi. Perhaps you can reword it. So Patricia says, can you please explain the differences between products you sell? So I have two programs. I have the Finish Your Thesis program, which is more of a big picture program. It's not so much about intensive writing during a short amount of time. So if you want to hand in your thesis in just a couple of months, that program wouldn't be the right fit for you. But if you really want to pick up momentum on your writing right now, then this program will help you to do that. So that's why I developed this program, to help you to pick up momentum and maintain the writing momentum. So this focuses primarily on writing. Patricia asks, is it easier a 3-paper thesis or a monograph? I think the question that you ask, whether if you just put 3 papers together into a thesis or you write a monograph, I think that depends on the department. Some departments allow you to just put all your publications together, and that's your thesis. And some of them do want you to write a monograph. So I don't know which one's easier. I think it does depend on your department. Quasi says, I have only 4 months. Do you think it's okay to finish through one-to-one strategy? So if you have 4 months and you get the one-on-one session with me, and then also you participate in the boot camp, then I think you will get a lot of momentum so that you are able to finish it by the deadline. And definitely during the one-on-one session, we would focus on how to get your momentum up given all of the other responsibilities you have or any special circumstances that you have. So Arwin says, I noticed that when I paid for the boot camp, it says that the Finish Your Thesis course has to be paid for as well. So Arvin, I think it's best if I communicate with you. And maybe you can send me an email to dora@finishyourthesis.com, and I will clarify that. But thank you so much for joining. I look forward to working with you. Marianne says, I tried to enroll. Very excited. Glad, Marianne. Payment didn't go through, so that's interesting. I have tried it. I did several test payments, both with PayPal and credit card. So I would encourage you to try again. And if you're not able to enroll for any technical reasons, then please email me at dora@finishyourthesis.com. I will make sure that you get into the program and that you also get the one-on-one strategy session with me. So I will just hang around here for another couple of minutes in case there are any questions about the program or the registration. So I'll take a water break here. Okay, so we've got some new members here. We got Dimitri, welcome. So PayPal is working. Connolly, welcome. So glad you're enrolled in the program. So the technology is working, which is always good because technology is great when it works. So when you, how much, let's see. Okay, payment went through. Okay, Rama says, how much did you spend to write your whole thesis? So that's a great question. I actually spent more than $297 because I had to get one-on-one help because this program wasn't available. There wasn't this type of program available back then. So that's why I made the pricing so that it's accessible to graduate students. But I did seek help because it's a good thing to reach out for help, and I did spend more than $297. Okay, so Beatrice enrolled as well. Well, I'm so glad. Welcome to the program. Quasi says, how is the paying system? So if you go to the program information page, then there are some green or blue buttons that says enrollment is open or enroll now, and then you can pay through credit card or PayPal. And we also have a payment plan, which is where you can start with just $97. And that's really helpful for students who are on a budget. So we do have a payment plan. Okay, I just joined. The link to the Facebook group says it's expired. So again, the technology glitched there, but I will make sure that if you're in the program, I will add you to the Facebook group. So thank you, Camille, for bringing that to my attention, and welcome to the program. Abdul says, how many contributions should be in the thesis? I'm not sure I understand the question. Okay, so comment from Andrea, link to the Facebook group doesn't work. Okay, so that's a bug that I'm going to work out. I'm going to get to it right after this training. So I will make sure that you get added to the Facebook group as soon as possible. Diana says, what is the payment? What is the payment program? Oh, yes. So if you go to the program information page, we have a payment plan where you can start with just $97 today, and then that is for 4 months. So it's 4 installments of $97. So that's the payment program. Marianne, I don't know if you're still on the call. If you have trouble enrolling, I think I know what the glitch may be for you. So I'm going to reach out to you directly and let you know how to proceed. So thank you, Marianne, for bringing that to my attention. Rama says, how much time did you spend to finish writing? So like I said, I did the bulk of my writing in less than 3 weeks, and don't remember how many hours a day, but I do remember that it wasn't that much because I was struggling with a medical condition at the time. Yurgita says, would it be possible to purchase only the modules for less than $297? So the modules by themselves, I don't know if that would work because they are geared towards the boot camp itself. So they're all about how to prepare for the boot camp. So it all works together. The modules, the Facebook group, and the small group coaching session. It all works together. So that's how I structured it. Adrian says, the Facebook group link issue may have to do with the group's privacy settings. Okay, I'm going to get to work on the Facebook group. Andrea says, love the new platform, much more user-friendly. Thank you so much. I actually transferred the Finish Your Thesis program as well to the new platform. So if you haven't gotten the email about how to transfer to the new platform for the Finish Your Thesis program, then let me know. Deadline 3 months from now, what would recommend for me? I'm halfway in the introduction. So if you're close to the deadline, you want to pick up momentum, start with the section that's easiest for you. Abdul says, please give Facebook link. Okay, I'm just going through the questions, but I will get to the Facebook. I will send an email to everyone who has already joined the group. And so Abdul, your question, how to join, if you mean the Facebook group. So if you join the program, then you get added to a list on an announcement list. So you get all the announcements about the bootcamp. And I'm going to write an email as soon as this training is over to make sure that you get into the Facebook group. So thank you for the flexibility. I'll work on that. Patricia says, what skills do we learn if we want to finish thesis in 1 year? So if you want to finish your thesis in 1 year, if you have anything to work on right now, that's really the question that I would ask myself if I were you. So if there's anything, any type of manuscript that you're working on right now, whether it's a publication, a proposal, a progress report, then you can get benefit from this bootcamp, because during the bootcamp, you're going to pick what the highest priority manuscript is. Perhaps you're working on more than one. And then we're going to use that to give you the training to get into a daily writing routine. So that's the question that I would ask myself, is that do you have a high priority manuscript that you can work on right now? If you do, then this bootcamp will give you the training. Abdul says, can you list out what are benefits we get after joining the program? So you get access to the training modules as long as you're in grad school. So you have the modules, and then the strategies that you learn during the program, those become part of your habit. And that's why I have the bonus weeks in June and July to really help you to implement those strategies. Rama says, you spent 3 weeks only to write the whole thesis from page 1 to the end. You should be a superwoman. Thank you, Rama. You know, when somebody gives you an ultimatum, such as, you can graduate if you write up some, this in 20 days, you kind of do figure out some things, but thank you so much. CJ says, deadline for payments. So enrollment ends on Friday. However, There are some limited time bonuses like the small group coaching session, because there I'm enrolling students on a first come, first serve basis. And if you want to get the one-on-one strategy session, then I will schedule a session for you if you sign up while you're still on this webinar. Let's see. Abdul says, what the fee? Yes, so it's $297 for one-time payment or installments, 4 installments of $97. And Adrian says, Rama, we do need to start somewhere in order to get done. Absolutely, you do need to get somewhere. I like to say, just start somewhere. So, okay, so if you're still listening to this webinar and you weren't able to get into the Facebook group, I will fix that issue. I like to say that, once you finish your thesis, you can pretty much figure out almost everything else. So I will figure out the Facebook issue. Make sure you get into the Facebook community. And if you have any other questions, please email me at dora@finishyourthesis.com. I really want to thank you for spending this time with me, and I'd like to welcome all of our new members to the program. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.